Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Michael Bellicosa, Community Engagement Manager at Wilton Library. I want to welcome our in-person audience and our Zoomers and our live streamers. On behalf of the library and all of us here, welcome to tonight's program, How Wilton Works. It's a great topic. Our partners, the League of Women Voters and Good Morning Wilton, we work with them many times on programs of this type. We love working with them, and this is going to be a very informative program. I'm sure you're going to get a lot out of it. With that, I'm going to turn this over to my friend Kim Healy from the League of Women Voters, and she'll introduce the program. Thanks.
So hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming and watching from home. I was going to actually almost say the exact same thing as Michael, so I will not go into all the welcomes and thank yous again. Just a quick overview of how the evening will go. There will be questions with cards from the people here in the room, and you can use the Q&A function on the Zoom. We will start with Lynn Vanderslice, who will give a brief Connecticut state and regional government overview. Following that will be a municipal government overview, and then moving into the Board of Selectmen and then her job as first Selectwoman. We will then move on to Michael Kalin, who is the chair of the Board of Finance, to go over what that looks like. Following is Debbie Lowe, Board of Ed. And last but not least is Rick Thomasetti, Planning and Zoning. And then we will open it up for questions and answers. Just a little plug I like to do for the League of Women Voters. Next Thursday on the 21st at 7:30 p.m., the League will be having Patty Temple from the Police Commission come and answer any questions, give a little overview of what the police station building will look like, and any kind of questions you may have will be answered. And if you could please email wiltonlwv@gmail.com and we will send you a Zoom link. Following that, Thursday, May 19th, I think the time is TBD. We're going to be doing a meet and greet for new members, prospective new members at Tuscan Cup. So hopefully we will send out some kind of PR on that and hope you can join us. So thank you all for coming or watching, and hopefully you'll get to learn a lot more about how Wilton works. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kim, and thank you to everyone here and on Zoom. So I am going to be operating the screen at the same time I'm speaking. So I guess for those of you here that can't see the screen, I'm starting with the second page. It's my understanding everybody's been provided with this handout. I'm not going to speak to each page, just maybe a sentence on some things that I think are important. The overview of the state and regional government. If you are new to Connecticut, the important thing to know is that we don't have county government. That's kind of unusual versus other states. On the following page, just talking about our local government, we are authorized through state statutes and organized by the town's charter as adopted by the voters. So our laws are either set by state statute or by ordinance, which has been adopted by either the voters or the Board of Selectmen, or by regulations that are adopted by Wilton's regulatory boards. We are a town meeting form of government. It's a traditional New England style government. In my opinion, it's the form of government that gives the most power to the individual residents, because you can vote individually on the budget and on bonding referendums, as opposed to another community such as Norwalk, where you have representatives, or even in Westport or Darien, there's a group of residents that are elected to do that for you. So you get to represent yourself at the annual town meeting or any special town meetings that are held. Of course, the upcoming annual town meeting is on May 3rd, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Wilton has a number of elected boards. They're all listed here. What are considered the four major boards are who are speaking tonight. There are also a number of appointed boards and commissions. They're all on the town website. They're appointed by the Board of Selectmen unless they are a subcommittee of just members of a particular board, then that board can appoint the subcommittee, but the Board of Selectmen appoints anybody that's outside of that particular board. All meetings, agenda, minutes, and recordings are available on the town website. You can also watch recordings on Optimum Channel 79. You can sign up to have emails or agendas or whatever you want sent to you directly. You can sign up on the e-alerts on the town website. There's a number of other options that you can sign up for. If you have not signed up for my e-alerts, I'd encourage you to do that. It's under town announcements. It's the same alerts if you signed up during COVID, and I do a once a month update myself, but there's a number of things that go through that same system. Next slide is the membership of the Board of Selectmen. You can walk through that, look at that at your leisure. Kind of the key responsibilities of the Board of Selectmen. We do act as the town's legislative body between the annual town meetings. So we do, during that time period, have the ability to adopt ordinances. It's been our policy that if it's an ordinance that has a town-wide impact, we wouldn't adopt that. That would go to a town meeting or special town meeting. But, if there are things of minor or limited impact, then we might adopt them ourselves. Recommend, obviously, an operating capital budget to the Board of Finance. We recommend the bonding referendums, both for the town and the schools to the annual town meeting. The Board of Selectmen is the only board that has that authority. We approve applications and accept federal and state grants. And you can kind of go through all the other components. Important thing to know, the Board of Selectmen does not have authority over the Board of Education. And the Board of Selectmen does not hire, discipline, or terminate members of the police or the fire department. We have a police commission. It's kept separate from the first select woman and the Board of Selectmen, kind of for obvious reasons. The fire commission hires, disciplines, and terminates all members. The only member of the fire department that reports to the first select woman or me is the fire chief, but he also reports to the fire commission. Why isn't that moving? Okay. So as far as my position is concerned, I'm the chief elected official and I'm the chief administrative official of the town. I'm chair of the Board of Selectmen. I am a paid employee of the town of Wilton. It's a full-time position. I'm responsible for the day-to-day operations of the town, with the exception of, as I said, the police and fire departments. I make recommendations for department heads to the Board of Selectmen. I hire, discipline, and terminate all the non-department head positions. I recommend the annual budget and bonding referendums to the Board of Selectmen, recommend various contracts, policies, so on and so forth. I'm the ex officio member of all boards and commissions. And I'm also a member, when you look at the regional government, of the WestCog and the Southwest Metropolitan Planning Organizations. And I actually have leadership positions in both. I'm on the executive committee of WestCog and vice chair of the Southwest Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm also the vice chair of the Regional Economic Development Commission. Key priorities for the Board of Selectmen at this time are infrastructure. There's 4 ways that we fund infrastructure. One is through bonding. Others are operating expenses. Also grants. You may have read about the American Rescue Plan grant that we received, also known as ARPA funds. There are also other grants that we apply for. You may have just heard that we received $983,000 in federal earmarked fund grant for the town-wide emergency communication system. Grants has been a huge focus over the last few years. We've also received over $20 million in either grants to support the NRVT, but primarily most of that money is money to repair bridges. So, this is increasingly becoming more important to us in a way to fund government. Our top priority within infrastructure is the new police headquarters. Notice when I walked in, there's a little information board in the front. Take a look at it. This is a project that has been in the making for over 20 years. The building is almost 50 years old. It's had absolutely no upgrades to the bathroom. It was built for, 24 officers. We're at 44. It assumed there would only be men. So they've taken a closet and made it the women's locker room. We have at least 5 female police officers. So you just kind of think about the inequity there. But also it's not ADA compliant. And so that's an issue for the public. We find a way to get them in the back door, but it's an operational issue, because if we have a police officer who, say, is injured a foot or a leg and can't go up and down the stairs, that means that person can't work because the bathroom is in the lower level in the locker room. So it's wasteful, just from that standpoint, but it's grossly overcrowded. The electrical system goes back to 1974, so it's inadequate. The heating system goes back to 1974. It's inadequate. Both are on their last legs. In 2016, let me get my dates right. I guess it was the end of 2016, the Board of Selectmen got serious about addressing this. We formed a committee that was a study committee. Then the following year it became a building committee. So you just think about that time frame. End of 2016, this is the May 2022 town meeting. We flushed this out. A lot of time was spent on what was needed, what's critical, how do we bring down the cost, so on and so forth. So we're going to be presenting to the Board of Finance this project. We'll videotape that. We'll circulate it so you can learn a lot more about it. And I encourage everybody to do that. But you'll sign up for those e-alerts, and you'll get all the links. You can see the other projects that we're focused on right now. And just to clarify, there is currently $5.4 million in the ARPA funds. The Board of Selectmen, through our own savings, has set up infrastructure fund of about 1.5 million. So we have that available to us in addition to any other monies that we have. We've been focused on modernizing government, creating it more efficient through technology. We have ongoing efforts to reduce the cost of government or to contain the growth. Since the 7-year average with this proposed budget is an annual increase of 0.67%. So we have been able to do that through changes that have been made, vacancies. We look at it. Does it need to be filled? A big thank you to our unions. They agreed to change medical plans, move to the state plan, and that's more than $600,000 a year in savings. So a number of things, both done by the departments and in contributions that the whole employee group has made to make that happen. We're very focused on master planning right now. Rick, I'm sure, is going to talk about that. That's key with them. Maintaining our AAA rating is critical to the board. We're one of the few communities in Connecticut that have a Moody's AAA rating. If you're not familiar with that, that's our bond rating. So it means it's easier for us to sell bonds, and it's cheaper for us to for those bonds. And also fully funding our pension. We're already over 100% funded, and our other post-employment benefits, we're well over 100% funded. So we're in great shape. Moody's says that all the time, that we have strong financial management. Next, I just want to talk a little bit about the annual town meeting for anybody there that's new. Connecticut state statutes and the town charter determine the structure of the meeting. The statutes require Robert's Rules of Order be followed. We have a parliamentarian there who is our town council, who makes sure that happens. The rules are adopted. We'll be putting them out publicly in advance of the meeting online so everybody can review them ahead of time. I've had the question, why can't this be a hybrid meeting? Because it is a fully in-person meeting. One is to allow for the integrity of those who are voting. If we have the normal 500 people that come in, you have to, if you're online, you're going to monitor all 500 boxes to make sure that somebody isn't voting in that person's place. It's not easy. But most importantly is there can be a motion from the floor to have a secret ballot and to have the secret ballot in writing. And you can't do that if you're on Zoom. So, and the other thing that's important for people to know, even if we could figure this out, the Connecticut legislature has not passed a law to allow remote access to meetings by the public to extend beyond April 30th. So it's questionable whether they're going to pass that legislation. And so if they don't, there's never a possibility of having a hybrid town meeting. So who can participate and vote? If you're a registered voter in town, if you own property, but you are not registered in Wilton, maybe you live somewhere else, you can vote. Important to know, the individual's name must be on the property record. So if I think people understand what that means. Who can come to the town meeting? Any member of the public. It's segregated where you will sit depending on whether or not you are a qualified voter. And I know there's a lot of parents who are concerned that they want to bring their children because they don't have a babysitter or someone to watch them. You can come with your child. You will sit in, if they're not, 18 and over and registered to vote, you can sit with them in the non-voter section. And when it's time to vote, you can come forward and vote in the voting section and then go back to your seat. So next slide kind of goes over in more detail about the annual town meeting. The important thing, why do you come in person? Because motions can be made from the floor. Motions can be made to lower any line that's on the budget, except that you can't lower debt service lower than the legal obligation. So, if you want to have a voice, you want to be there if that vote happens, you need to be there in person to be able to do that. And following the town meeting, there is voting immediately after that night, and then there's voting on Saturday, May 7th from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We'll be posting the presentations on the town website in advance of the town meeting. So if you can't be there to hear them, but you're going to vote on Saturday, you can look at them online, or there will be a recording of the meeting also. So I've listed a number of contacts, key contacts for town business. First being the town website. I see people all the time asking questions on Facebook. I think that's great that there's so many residents that love to provide answers and sharing. It's what's great about this community. Not all answers are correct. So I recommend people double check the town website. See Click Fix if you're not already on it. It is a work order system. It's computer based. You put in your request. You can either do it through the town website or through your phone. You put your email address in if you want. Then you'll get email alerts when something happens. But behind your report, that reporting system is also a work order system. So if you put in something about a pothole, it goes directly to DPW. And we prioritize that work. But if the guys are out in the field, a crew's out in the field, they keep, most of them have the phone and look at it, and they may see a pothole comes in the next street and maybe they can catch it that same day. So it's really helpful. Some people think if they call DPW and submit it by the phone, it gets done faster. It actually doesn't. It's actually slows down the process if you call. The fastest thing to do is to use See Click Fix. And you can use it for a lot more than just potholes. You can see a number of issues. If you have a problem and a concern, you send it in that way. I mentioned the e-alerts. Another thing is online payments. Certainly what happened with Webster Bank, if you're aware of it, this July 1st, there were problems with the bank. The easiest way to pay and be posted immediately is through the town's online system. So I recommend that. You can also pay for your dog licenses, your transfer tickets. There's other information, that's permit forms online. And there's also a section called How Do I? And I recommend that again for the folks that sometimes go to Facebook and say, how do I? Check that out because there's a number of links. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike.
Thank you.
I guess I should have introduced you. Mike Kalin, the chairman of the Board of Finance.
And I'll add for tonight's purposes, I actually served on the Charter Commission that is responsible for the production of the book that's sitting on the table to Lynn's right there. And I just wanted to emphasize the point that Lynn made about the town meeting. When we were reviewing the charter a few years ago, one of the things we were asked to review is whether we would keep the town meeting form of government, because we're really one of the few, if not the only town our size in Connecticut that has retained the pure town meeting form of government, where every taxpayer and every voter gets to have a say every year on what the annual town budget is and on what the what's approved for bonding. Now, with respect to my slides, and my first slide's on the screen, and I only have two, and I'll explain to you why that's really all you're going to need to understand the Board of Finance. First and foremost, there's a listing of the members of the Board of Finance. And what I'd like to do here is two things for those of you that are watching. If you have a pen or pencil with you and you have paper in front of you with this slide on it, the first thing you should do is correct when Rich Santosky's term ends. His term ends in 2023, not 2025. And I'm not pointing this out just to be a nitpicker here. It's to really understand how the Board of Finance works, because every elected member of the Board of Finance has a 4-year term, but the terms are staggered so that you, the voters, elect 3 new members or re-elect a member of the Board of Finance every 2 years. So every 2 years, we in the town of Wilton are electing 3 members to the Board of Finance. The reason for the confusion for Rich is that he was just elected in this last election in 2021, but he was elected to complete the term of somebody who was elected in 2019. Now, the other thing I'm going to ask you to do, which is going to surprise you, because it's not for partisan or political reasons, but it's also for understanding how we work. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is make a notation next to each individual as to what their political affiliation is. And this is for purposes of the Freedom of Information Act, which I'm going to need to talk to you about a little bit so you understand it. So for purposes of the Freedom of Information Act, Michael Kalin is a Democrat, Stuart Koenigsberg is a Republican, Chris Strout, much to his chagrin, is a Democrat. I say that because he's a registered unaffiliated, but he needs to be registered to caucus with the Democrats for Freedom of Information Act purposes. Sandra Arkell is a Democrat, Matt Raimondi is a Republican, and Rich Santosky is a Republican. So there's 6 of us. there's 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats for at least Freedom of Information Act purposes and maybe political purposes too, sometime. And the reason you need to focus on this is because every member, including myself as chairman, has an equal vote and equal say in the decisions that the Board of Finance makes. And importantly, there is no tie-breaking mechanism. I do not get an extra vote because I'm chairman. I can't break a tie because I'm chairman. And we cannot pass anything or take any act unless we get a majority to agree. So what it means now with the current Board of Finance is that to do anything, if all 6 members are present, we need to get 4 people to vote for it. So now, what is it that we're supposed to be voting on? So the next slide would be, it's a summary, but it's really a statement of what we do because it's really as simple as this. On an annual basis, we approve the operating budgets for the town. We also are asked to make a recommendation on the bonding proposals that are presented at the town meeting. And ultimately, we have to decide what the mill rate's going to be, what the tax rate's going to be on the property owners in town. And it's really as simple as we have the Board of Ed operating budget, we have the Board of Selectmen operating budget, we have debt service that's fixed, and then we set aside a 10% reserve so that there's basically 4 principal components to what our total operating requirements are, what our needs are, what we need to fund. And then in terms of the sources of funding, again, there's really only, and here, there's really only 3 principal elements of it. It's revenue other than property taxes, which would be fees that are assessed by the town, it'd be grants that the town receives. And then I mentioned the 10% reserve that we maintain. If at the end of the year, we have more than 10% in reserve, the excess fund balance then comes into the sources of funds for the next fiscal operating year. And last and certainly not least is the property taxes. And the property taxes are simply, we take what the total funding requirements are, we subtract the other revenue sources, we look at what the grand list is, excuse me, which is the value of all the real and personal property in town on the tax rolls. And then we apply a tax rate to it that meets our funding requirements. Now,
I think you meant to say a 1% reserve. You set up a 1% reserve within the budget.
I think I've done that before too.
Yeah, I know. You
Yeah, I
always
know.
say 10 and I know you mean 1.
Yeah, so sorry about that. So now thank you, Lynn.
Yep.
All right, so in terms of how we reach these decisions then. So I outlined some of this last night at the Board of Finance meeting, so I'm not going to repeat it all today. But basically, the Board of Education and the Board of Finance need to submit their budgets to us at least 60 days before the town meeting. In practice, it's sooner, it's further in advance than that. The superintendent submitted his budget this year to us at the end of January. And then once the budgets are submitted to us, each of the 6 members I referred to, they begin studying it. And then each of the 6 members, we submit written questions to the Board of Education and the Board of Finance. The Board of Education, the Board of Selectmen. And then once we've done that, we meet with them in person. We being the Board of Finance, we have an in-person meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education. We review some of the questions that we asked in writing. They answer some of them at the meeting, some of them they answer after the meeting. in writing. And we have a back and forth about it so that we better understand each element of their budgets so that we know what we're funding. Now, once we do that, we then also, and this is in the charter, we're required to do it, we hold public hearings on the budget. We're required to do that 35 days before the town meeting to get input from all the voters before we vote on anything. The one section of the charter that I wanted to read word for word to just reinforce this so you understand what we're tasked with is that the Board of Finance shall, and these are mandatory, shall consider the views expressed at these public hearings, the views expressed in other communications by voters, the financial resources available to the town, and the extent to which, in the Board of Finance's collective judgment, the Board of Education and Board of Selectmen can find savings within their respective budget requests. The Board of Finance shall also consider, to the extent necessary, debt service requirements, the appropriate amount of the general fund balance, and anticipated non-tax revenues. Right, so I made the point already that we have to act by majority vote. And I asked you to pay attention to people's party affiliation for Freedom of Information Act purposes. And the reason I asked you to do that is because you need to understand, under the Freedom of Information Act, we cannot talk to each other about what we're going to vote on at a Board of Finance meeting outside of a publicly noticed Board of Finance meeting. The only exception to that is this caucus that I mentioned before, that because I'm a Democrat for caucus purposes, I can talk to the other two Democrats before we vote on something. But because the board split evenly 3-3, I don't know what's going to happen when we get to the Board of Finance meeting to discuss the issue and vote on the issue, because I haven't talked to the Republicans about it. So I mention this because when I read the coverage in the local press about our meetings and they say it's confusing, well, so we're confused too, okay, on this thing. Because what I want everybody to understand, because it's what I wanted to happen when I agreed to be the chairman of the Board of Finance, is that there are no preordained conclusions on what we're voting on. So, you know, the best example everybody could see was when we had this discussion and voting on the Board of Ed operating budget Monday night on April 4th. The reason people couldn't see where we were going with this is I didn't know where we were going with this. All I knew after each individual member made an opening statement that there were 4 people on the board that did not seem to be in favor of giving the Board of Education everything that they had asked for in their budget. There were 2 that stated directly that they were in favor of giving them everything. So I had a sense of where people were going, but I didn't know what the number was. And if you go back and watch that, you will see I'm literally throwing out numbers because I'm trying to find out where the other members are on what they'll all agree to. And ultimately, all I'm trying to do as chairman is get 4 votes for something. Because if we don't get 4 votes for something, then we have failed and I have failed as a chairman, because that's our responsibility to do that. So now, having said that, I just want to conclude with, The biggest takeaway anyone should take from this meeting tonight about the Board of Finance is that your vote in the municipal election matters. Sandy Arkell, who's one of the present members of the Board of Finance, won by 10 votes. She had 2,721 to 2,711. Now, what that translates into on the Board of Finance is if Sandy Arkell had not been elected, because she was one of the members of the Board of Finance that was in favor of fully funding the Board of Education. If she had not been elected, the Board of Education may have gotten less in the appropriation that was approved by the Board of Finance. And had she not gotten elected, I'm sorry, I think I said that wrong too. If Sandy hadn't, well, in either case, if Sandy hadn't been elected, they may have gotten less. And if someone else was elected, they may have gotten a lot less. So, one of the things that's changed since I've been in town, and I've been in town 30 years, is we now have competitive elections for the Board of Finance, and we now have balance on the Board of Finance. So pay attention and vote at the municipal elections. Thank you. All right. Sitting to my left is the chairwoman of the Board of Education, Deborah Lowe.
This is on, right? Okay, thank you. First of all, thanks to the League of Women Voters and the library, and good morning, Wilton, for hosting this seminar, webinar, Zoominar, whatever you'd like to call it. I have a pleasant job tonight of basically bragging about the school district. So if you will indulge me for a few minutes, because there's a lot of happy news. When surveys are done or when people report at various meetings, many people say, and you hear this often, is we moved here because of the school system. And for all of you who made the choice because of that, we're really proud of that fact. Wilton has a tradition of educational excellence. We're a source, I think, of community pride for everyone. And we consistently kind of garner impressive state and national rankings, which you can see on that slide. The next page, just to get into the technical aspects of the Board of Ed, to mirror a little bit about what Mike said, we also have 6 members. They are elected to 4-year terms. We are term limited to no more than 2 consecutive terms. And in every other year, there are 3 people or 3 positions open, and people run for that. We have, in terms of organization, we have a chair, that's myself. Ruth DeLuca is our current vice chair. Jen Lawler is secretary, and our members, Mandy Schmauk, Nicola Davis, and Pam Ely. We also organize ourselves around sort of standing committees for various purposes. One is policy and communications, pretty self-explanatory. Another is teaching and learning, focusing on the curriculum and the instruction. We have a business operations committee, and that was started by our current superintendent. It's unique in that it not only looks at the financials and the facilities planning, but it also partners with Board of Finance members. So 2 are invited to stand or to sit on that committee. We also have an executive and governance committee by our bylaws. So the officers can and do communicate about agenda planning and timelines and things like that. Each board member serves as a liaison to various organizations, community organizations such as the Wilton Youth Council or the Wilton Education Foundation. There's a liaison with each and every PTA. There are various state organizations as well. Our direct role is pretty much totally at the systems level. We don't operate as a Board of Ed at the building level, or certainly, of course, not at the classroom level. So our job is to put all 3,600 students and the 525 staff members and the superintendent and sort of do the oversight of all of that. So that our role there is looking at strategically, setting strategic goals, developing policy, program and operations oversight, assessing results in general, community outreach and communication, and of course, budget approval and advocacy. Mike alluded to the budget process. It's long and sometimes I would call it torturous, but the superintendent presents a budget in January. The Board of Ed then takes it and examines and has various workshops, et cetera, and approves it. And that's the budget that gets submitted to the Board of Finance for its review. We also hire and evaluate the superintendent. The Board of Ed does not evaluate any other personnel. That is the superintendent's job. We evaluate the superintendent as a Board of Ed, and that's our single personnel evaluation job. We are also established by state statute. Lynn mentioned that we don't report to the town, but we like to think that we have a cooperative and collaborative relationship. As a matter of fact, we do share 2 positions with the Board of with the town, our financial director and our facilities director. A little bit about superintendent. Our superintendent, Dr. Kevin Smith, was hired in 2014. He was formerly superintendent in Bethel. He earned his doctorate from Fordham University, where he's now an adjunct professor. And we're really proud that this year he was named Connecticut Superintendent for 2022 by the Connecticut PTA. So the next slide just speaks to our enrollment trends for the district. You can see the history there. We had a big report done by an outside consultant. This is some of the sort of cut and paste numbers. Our enrollment as a district has been declining for probably 15 years at this point. And that mirrors the state birth rate and even the national birth rate. Just there's a general population decline. We think it's now on the upswing. What's convoluting that is the current real estate market, whether that's going to make things speed up faster in terms of our enrollment build back or not. But from this slide, you can see Miller Driscoll, Cider Mill, Middlebrook, and the high school. It's our Miller Driscoll population that looks like it is turning around in terms of going from a decline in enrollment to an increase in enrollment. And there are some numbers there for next year. You can see that. So, excuse me while I take a drink. So sometimes I have trouble with these slides. That's all right. I'll drink some more water. Thank you. So I talked about our legacy of excellence. And I just wanted to give a quick overview of all the components and the moving parts that go into making the district and what we think of as our tradition of excellence. One is it's really important to have a shared vision. And Dr. Smith and every district needs to review and revise and keep updating it. So 2 years ago, Dr. Smith set a very collaborative and involved process. We had community people, students, parents, community leaders, administrators, board members, et cetera. You know, lots of sticky notes and blank easels. You know, you can write your ideas down and brainstorming and all that sort of stuff. And through a long and involved collaborative process, came across or developed this shared vision for our Wilton High School graduates. And a lot of these are very aspirational, as you can tell. But we want to know, where the heck are we going? And this is what we wish for each one of our graduates. And then now we're sort of working backwards. Like, what does that look like? Even in kindergarten, what does it mean to be an ethical leader? Well, it might start with as simple as lining up for recess, you know, without kicking and hitting anybody, and just, you know, that working with your peers. And then, of course, that will amp up as the grades continue. But we're really trying to be very specific and strategic at each grade level about what these attributes look like and how we can develop them. So again, we're just proud of this vision. And thanks to Dr. Smith and his leadership. The next slide speaks about our programs, and this is the undergirding of that vision. How do we, sort of get kids to that final vision? You can see the list there. We have comprehensive programs academically at the high school. In addition to numerous and wonderful courses, we have a full array of advanced placement courses and also early college credit to UConn for some of our courses as well. In addition, we've got the full range of co-curricular clubs and activities. It's a impressive list. And of course, we're also known for our athletic program, very competitive. Some of our graduates are outstanding athletes and go on to college and excel there in that field. We are also our arts and music program. They just keep winning awards everywhere they go and every time students submit anything. So it's a real exciting, those are exciting programs. We're not perfect. We always have to, and we should work for continuous improvement. Our goals right now, the obvious one is to try to recover from the COVID impacts of COVID. There were remote learning and hybrid learning were fine because it was necessary, but it created some learning gaps in our kids, but we still need to move forward. So how do you fill that gap? And that's what we're working on this year, and that will continue into next year as well. We do that through much of the personnel we already have, but as Lynn alluded to, we've also been the beneficiary of some federal grants and support for extra staff for those purposes. We're also working to improve our overall math achievement. This has been a work in progress. Standards have changed, instructional strategies have changed. We are in the middle of our K-2 program has yielded really good results. Cider Mill is on that same track. We expect to see really good results. And we just did a new round of winter test results that look really strong. Middle school got interrupted by COVID a little bit, but we are resequencing the math progression of courses, and the same thing at the high school. So that takes years of work and build up, but we're well into that. So what makes our programs excellence, the heart and soul is our faculty. We have about 575 total number of employees. 400 of them are certified, meaning teachers or counselors, administrators, et cetera. You can see the high level of experience that they bring, the number of advanced degrees. For every position that we advertise, typically it's very competitive, especially at the elementary level. That's not to say there aren't some challenging positions sometimes to fill. If you have a particular world language vacancy or a particular math course that's very advanced, those are also sometimes hard to fill. But in general, for any candidate that is out there, Wilton is a place that they want to be, and they come and they tend to stay. And our faculty, you can see there's just some bragging rights there as well.
So I'm curious who the former valedictorian is, but maybe you're not going to tell us. That's cool.
I don't remember her
Okay.
name.
Oh,
She
okay.
teaches science at the high school.
Cool.
Okay. Another thing is that typically quality school districts, you've got to look at class sizes and make sure that they're reasonable. Doesn't mean that they're tiny, but in general, you want students to be in what's called reasonable class sizes. For this year and also next year, we're making sure, again, in reaction to COVID, that our elementary school classes stay on the smaller side of the planning average. And so that has taken some more staff, but we feel we need to certainly make that investment. Also, an important part of our program is that around 16% of our students qualify for special education services. That number is around 575 students. And each of those students are qualified based on federal and state qualifications and standards. It's not Wilton's decision whether a student qualifies for special ed. Does he or she meet the criteria set forth in federal and state guidance. Each student has an IEP, an individualized education plan, which is basically a contract between the students, student families, and the schools as to what level of and types of services are necessary. Our student needs range from very, very complex to perhaps less complex. Maybe it is a speech and language delay that sometimes gets grown out of. But anyway, it's a range of services, all falling under a special ed umbrella. We're proud of our services. We just had a report at the board for our students with the most complex needs and the services beginning at pre-K and going to our Community Steps program, which is our program for students 18 to 22 years old. We have grown programs on site and in district, which is added to our staffing and added to our expense. But we figured that it's a wonderful investment because it keeps kids in district. It's the best thing to do educationally. And it also avoids the cost of sending students to much more expensive and often less effective outplacements. So I think we've done wonderful work in that area. And I encourage you to look at the tape of the Board of Ed meeting, last one. I had a long presentation on the services that we provide for the students with the most complex needs. We also, and this is not new to Wilton, but across the state and the nation, realize that the social emotional needs of students needs to be paid attention to, that kids don't learn if they're not ready to learn, if there are things in the way. So we want to pay attention to their social emotional health. And we try to do that in proactive ways. We try to be as basically take a self-awareness point of view. Can you figure out how you're feeling? Can you name it? Can you do something about it? Can you recognize it in others? And so just sort of making it part of the student's norm. Again, doing it age appropriately, starting in kindergarten, all the way through the high school. We also pride ourselves on making sure that our school climate are welcoming, accepting, inclusive, comfortable, and safe places to be. Okay, that brings me to the end. There's more bragging points there, and we could go on. But much of our graduating classes go on to attend four-year colleges. Some of them are very recognized and well-known. Other students choose a path to a specialized training area, or they decide to take a gap year, or they go into the military. But they're all grounded and ready for whatever path they choose. So again, I just think our students are they've had a wonderful experience in this district, and they leave well prepared. And I think it's because we've got all these components working on full steam all the time, and we're working for continuous improvement. So thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Rick Santowski. Thomas I spent last night with the Board of Finances.
It's okay, Debbie. It's okay. Thank you, though. Because now if you have something it's the hair. Rich is bald, and but that's okay. Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, the library. Good morning, Wilton. I said to Debbie earlier, if I make a mistake, you can just blame the Board of Ed because I'm a product of Wilton schools, but I don't know who you can blame. But no, I'm a lifelong resident, and I'm the current chair of Wilton Planning and Zoning. Obviously, if you're following along on the slides, we're an elected body. But I wanted to say something about our members. And, before I say something I'll say this after, but we have 9 members on our commission, and we're all elected. We go through, I believe, pretty great lengths to be bipartisan. Most of our decision-making is unanimous, with very few exceptions. We really do work hard, and we have a very talented group of people. I mean, I could go down the list. We have an architect, an attorney, an IT professional. We have another person who has studied all kinds of different things. Every time I speak to her, she's like, oh, I went to UConn and took special courses in. I'm like, really? How do you have time for this stuff? We have a person who runs their own business. We have another registered architect. We have a professional engineer, and we have somebody in finance. These are all your neighbors. And we, unlike Lynn, we all do this for free, but I will thank Lynn because she usually donates back a portion of her salary, all of her salary. But like all of us, we all volunteer here. And so when we see the commentary in the local paper from, in the Facebook posts and the like, we take it with a grain of salt because we here know how much work goes into this. The commission that I chair puts in a tremendous amount of work. And I'm not just saying they come to the meetings. They go through multiple applications, and some of our applications are quite large. When we have an application, for instance, one that we just approved, Melissa and Doug, that is a $40 to $50 million project. Now think about the resources that somebody is coming to our community to invest, and it's our job to vet that out. And the packages are quite significant and take a lot of thought, a lot of expertise. We don't take this lightly as a group. And we don't really look at each other in terms of party affiliation. We look at each other in terms of our expertise in the subject matter, and we really rely on each other. And I think that's important to note, and not just in our commission, but in the rest here. I think people who move to Wilton need to understand this idea of the town form of government. It's very powerful. I've lived here my entire life, and I think the people who came before all of us who volunteered their time, it's very easy again to be like, oh, they're doing this now, they're doing that. They're doing it for good reason. Their hearts are all in the right place, and they're volunteering their time and their expertise and their talents. And I think it's important to note that. And I think it's important also that we don't lose sight of that, and that we all can look to ourselves to say, can we volunteer for something? Because the past several years, the Wilton used to be ripe with volunteers, and people would line up to be on planning and zoning. Like you really had to, I don't want to say you had to be somebody, but you really had to put your dues in before they even considered you. And that's been changing. I think people are a little fearful of the volunteer. Maybe it's just a sign of the times or different generational viewpoints, but I think we need to go back as a community because it's important that we run our own community, in my view. I think the town meeting is actually one of our amenities in our town, much like the school is. The town meeting is an amenity that we should all be thankful for because we all have a say. So we are elected. But what do we do? For the vast majority of citizens, we barely ever impact your life. You don't come to planning and zoning if you want to put a shed up or you want to put a fence up. Very little of what happens in the residential zones, we call them the R1 and R2A zones. It's where the bulk of everybody lives in town. They're the 1 acre zones, the 2 acre zones. You have certain ability by right to build a house on those zones, in those zones with certain accessory functions that are just allowed by right. With few exceptions, there are things that you're not allowed by code, by our regulations to do, that you would have to come before the Planning and Zoning Commission to vet that out and to apply for a special permit. But most of what we do takes place in the commercial zones. We have applications that people bring to our commission, mostly in the commercial zones. What they bring to us are special permits. We look at the uses in those zones. We look at the site plans in those zones, the adjacencies in those zones. And it's up to us to make the determination, mainly, if they are abiding by our regulations. We're not inventing anything here on the fly, right? So what we're doing here is, as you can see on the slide, we're overseeing the land use and the regulations of our town. So one of our big functions is to act basically as a judiciary. People bring their applications to us. We look at them. Do you comply with our regulations? Yes, you do. You have the right bulk area, parking, whatever the metrics may be, and it's up to the commission to weigh in on that. With very few exceptions, do we have much discretion? Now, it's not that we don't ask questions. It's not that we don't push applicants. When you see things about, number of users in a certain business or whatever, we can ask certain questions of applicants, and we can make sure certain things abide by our regulations in terms of screening mechanical equipment and these kind of more mundane things. But we're here to uphold our regulation and, more importantly, uphold the health, safety, and welfare of the population. That's our one function we perform. The other function we perform is legislative. This is where we can either by an applicant who comes in, so by an application, change our regulations, or the commission itself can come in and put an application forward to change our application. It's completely discretionary. We can, we've done it more often than we used to. And I think that is a function of the fact that Wilton has reached a point in its history where we need to make some decisions. So as a body, planning and zoning, we do have staff, unlike the Board of Finance, sorry.
They have a CFO.
Oh, that's right. You do have a CFO. You have one staff. We have a whole room. But it's important that we do. I like to give Mike a hard time. It's important that we do because we have a lot of applications that come before us. And one of our functions is a planning function. So you'll notice on the slide that we just most recently undertook the Plan of Conservation and Development. That's required by state statute. And that plan was done early by 1 year. The entire town participated, and it sets basically the policy objectives moving forward for a 10-year period. We know from that policy directive the things that we need to do over the next 10 years. And one of the big things that we need to do is undertake a master plan. And so we have started the first phase of our master planning, which is the greater Wilton Center area. Well, it's been funded by the Board of Selectmen. We are in the middle of it. We should wrap it up later this summer, early this fall. And then from there, we will do a regulatory change where we will revamp our regulations, and then we will move on to other areas in town. We will do a master plan for Georgetown, and these are all the commercial districts, Cannondale, Gateway, and hopefully, more importantly, we will do a town-wide amenities plan. And we look at that and look at the projections of the number of people who are going to be in the school system, how our traffic flows work, how we protect our environment. All these things go into how we look at our plan of development moving forward. It is a balancing act. We don't want to come in and just start developing the entire town. But it is important to note that Wilton is effectively built out, right? There's no more farms or large tracts of land that you will see subdivided over the next 20 years. Most of them have been built on. There has been pressure to preserve what is left, which is a good thing. Many property owners that have larger parcels have donated them or look to donate them or have preserved them in some way or another. So that means our growth doesn't happen organically in the suburban model that we once had. And so you will see moving forward that the development potential will happen more in the commercial areas. And that's by not so much by design, but just by the organic nature of how Wilton has developed. And I want to just take a little side note here. When we talk about development in the commercial zones, most of the development that has taken place in Wilton's commercial zones was just that. It was commercial. There was a lot of office buildings. You can see that down south on Route 7. Wilton was, and still is, has a number of Class A office space that was built out through the late 60s through the 80s, rehabbed in the 90s and early aughts. But that market has dwindled for obvious reasons. The pandemic is just one example of it, but just the trends of people moving out of Connecticut, people moving back into the urban areas has changed that. So we need to be proactive on how we repurpose some of our commercial buildings. We don't want them to sit idle or fallow. And they are a big portion and have been a big portion of our grand list, where we would have, let's say, 4060 Danbury Road and some other big properties are a fairly large portion of our grand list, but they don't use a lot of our services. So that's always been kind of a trade-off that our community has been willing to make for the past 40 plus years. Moving forward, the trend will be to redevelop those areas, or some of those areas, hopefully not all, with mixed use residential. The one thing we should be cautious of, we'll hear this coming up more and more. There is a statute in Connecticut called 830G. And what 830G is, it's, and I'll just be brief on this, it's fairly complex, but the essence of it is that the state of Connecticut passed a law 1980s somewhere, probably in the 80s, in an effort to make housing more affordable. They said, okay, if you do not have a certain baseline of housing that we deem to be affordable, and there's a whole metric in which they determine this, you will now need to build affordable housing. And the way you'll do that is it'll be incentivized in the private market. So if someone brings an application to your community and you don't meet the metric of the affordability that they deem to be the baseline, if they bring an application with 30% affordability and also with that a adjusted income level that meets another metric that, you know, with a formula, there's very little the community can do to deny that application. We can deny it based on wetlands or health, safety, and welfare. So for instance, if somebody wanted to bring a 30-story building, we could deny that because we could not fight a 30-story fire in a community like Wilton. We don't have that type of apparatus. But if somebody wanted to bring a structure that was, say, 5 stories with a density of 50 or 60 units per acre, something that you might see in an urban area, there's very little we can do to deny that type of application. And the courts have sided with the state of Connecticut on this. So from time to time, we can get credits, and we just recently came off a moratorium. But when we talk about 830G, it's important for our residents to know that the town, and specifically planning and zoning, has very little authority over those applications. So that is an issue, and we've been under continual pressure from the state and special interest groups for more legislation like that. And I don't want to get political about it, but I think the citizens need to be aware that we are being pushed in a direction to develop more housing. It's not simply that the town of Wilton is looking to develop more housing. The state of Connecticut and certain interest groups are really pushing a narrative for transit-oriented development, meaning development around train stations, and really higher density housing within certain commercial areas. The most recent half a mile, 4 miles of a train station. So, and those are powerful groups that are lobbying. Fortunately, heretofore, they have not been successful, but they haven't backed away either. So, you know, we all have to be kind of on our toes with that. But Wilton is moving forward of its own accord. We understand that as a community, we need to look forward to the appropriate development in our commercial centers. You know, we had a meeting the other night, and it was very interesting. People want more restaurants. They, you know, they want to fill in all the vacancies, but they don't want any more people in town, and they don't want any more density. And that's an issue because one begets the other. And so it's up to us as a commission, and ultimately up to the community who gave us this authority to understand where these developments go. So I don't want to get too much into exactly specifically how we go through applications, but suffice it to say, we take these applications in, we give the applications out to various town agencies, the fire department, the building department, the highway department, the conservation department, our architectural review board, wetlands. They all go out and we get their input back when we make our decisions. So moving forward with some of these decisions, we really do need to be careful on how we perform our function. Now, one of the things I will say to end my pontification here. Recently, we've heard between these two individuals some back and forth in terms of our budget, which is important. It's up to the Board of Selectmen, is up to the Board of Education to understand what we need as a community in terms of our budget. And it is up to the Board of Finance to authorize that and put it out to the public meeting. I'm paraphrasing here. The only person up on this stage, or the only group of people up on this stage who create any of this, is planning and zoning, because we're the only folks up here who can unlock the development potential of what happens in our community. So I took a little note down here. So we recently approved the Melissa and Doug project. Currently, that project takes in $112,000 or $115,000 is the tax revenue that is taken in by the town of Wilton based on the valuation of that property. When that building is constructed, the town will bring in approximately 1.1 million, and there'll be about $200,000 in property taxes based on the automobiles parked in the lot, and a one-time fee of $450,000 for the building permits and the various permits. So I went to Wilton School, so I don't do math very well. $1.25 million in property taxes that will increase in 2 years. And we have a number of these on board, and people say to me, but they're going to be big net users of the schools. And they're not. And the reason they're not is they're not designed to be big net users of our schools. If you look at the makeup of these buildings, they are mostly 1 and 2 bedroom units. The second bedroom is market driven for folks who are empty nesters or in transition who want to have either a guest room or want to have a home office. So the idea that these are going to drive up in the enrollment in the schools is not what the intended purpose is, and not what we understand these developments to be. And they won't all be like that. We need to have different types of housing for different members of our community. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing to have some townhouses built in our town with families in them. It is a good thing to have apartments built where some empty nesters can live, or some folks who are looking to Wilton to make it their community. When we talk about amenities, right? And I hope I didn't offend Deborah, but so yeah, I get the pass. But we talk about the amenities, and we see this up close and personal when we do our studies, our master plan and our plan of conservation and development. People come here for the schools, but they also leave. And that's a trend we really have to change. Now, I know we're not going to change. Look, I get it. It's Connecticut. You want to go to South Carolina. The taxes are better. It's all better somewhere else, right? The weather's better. Your taxes are better. But as a lifelong resident who has multiple family members that live here, I take a little bit of an issue with that, because I think I know we do. We have a great community other than our schools. And it's up to us, everybody who leads our community, to point that out and to come up with other amenities that we can have to not only attract, future residents, but also attract members of our neighboring communities. I have my own small business. I'm an architect. My clients are in Darien and Wilton and Norwalk and New Canaan and South Carolina and Delaware and New York. And they hire me even though I'm in Wilton, Connecticut. And they hire other businesses even though they're in Wilton, Connecticut. We need our retail sector to perform that way. We need our restaurants to perform that way. I think we have a lot of really great assets. That's one of the reasons why I ran for this position. I didn't run so that I could have another project in my office all the time that I can't bill for. I did it because I think it's important to our community to give my expertise back. And my expertise, I think, is unique as a lifelong resident. I hear people, I don't want Wilton to change at all. But newsflash, It has changed and it will change. Change is a good thing. Change is never bad. We can undo things. Heck, we got a company here who built a building 20 years ago and they want to tear it down. Nothing is permanent. It can all be better and it can all be okay. And I urge everybody listening to, take part in it. Don't just bicker on Facebook. Don't just complain about something. Add value to what we're doing. I can joke with Michael. I can joke with everybody up here. Wilton schools are fantastic. I would not have settled back here if I didn't think it would have done the right thing for my child, right? I mean, I've got nieces and nephews and my son who all graduated, all products of the Wilton public school system. It's a phenomenal system. There's limitations. There's fiscal limitations. There's environmental limitations. If we don't watch out for this stuff moving forward, then we are not that beacon. I pride myself as the author of our vision statement in the Plan of Conservation and Development. I'd urge you to read that. I challenge everybody that I meet, especially at the government level. We at Planning and Zoning are visionary. We're always looking to the future. And I challenge everyone else on these other commissions to not think myopically about today. Debbie should be thinking about 5 or 10 or 20 years from now and Wilton's public schools should be, as should the Board of Selectmen, as should the Board of Finance, because this is the long game we play. But thank you again. I pontificated enough. I had no prepared remarks, but thank you all.
Next time, prepare.
Next time.
Yeah, maybe. So thank you all so much for this such informative evening. We do have some questions. And we'll start with the one that Rick was alluding to, which is how can someone get involved if they're interested in joining or, joining a commission or serving on a board?
So I'm going to take that since the Board of Selectmen does the appointments. So first of all, for people out there listening in here, if you mirror the voters, then that means the largest group of people are unaffiliated voters. There was some conversation about political parties, but most people out there are unaffiliated. And it seems that the trend for younger people is to be unaffiliated. So there is a place if you are unaffiliated. I was unaffiliated when I was asked to fill a vacancy. I was then forced to change my affiliation to go on the ballot. I thought I had done a really good job. People were happy. I wasn't thrilled with the fact that I was forced to change my affiliation. So when I became first select woman, that was an important thing, was to change the pathway to be appointed. And what we did is we opened up a pathway for unaffiliated voters to petition on. I actually didn't think they should have to petition, but I lost that one. It was we usually are fairly unanimous also, but that one was a 3 in favor, 2 of us opposed. But so if you are interested in coming onto a board of commission, you can go through a political party to recommend you. You can do that if you're unaffiliated or whether you're in that party, or if you are unaffiliated, you do the petitioning process and you put your name forward. We have done appointments from, all different ways. And I think that we've really focused in the last number of years, particularly on like a police commission or a fire commission, where those individuals are making hiring decisions. Politics should not play into that at all. It should be the best qualified person who has the kind of background to make hiring, disciplining, and termination decisions. So it's on the front page of the website, it says volunteer. You can click on it. It tells what positions are open and it gives you the whole process. So that's pretty much it. And if you want an elected position, again, you can petition onto a ballot as an elected individual, or you can work through the town committees if you want to be on a party line.
So since I served on the nominating committees for both the Republicans and the Democrats, I just want to add to that so that people understand the elective process. And the way it works is when we have these municipal elections, which I urge you all to vote on, in order to get your name on the ballot, you have to do one of 3 things. You either have to go through the Republicans, the Democrats, or as Lynn said, you can petition to do it. But the reality is with the way that, and this is the legal system, not the political system, is set up is that the Republicans and the Democrats, because they're the major political parties, they automatically have the right to put somebody's name on the ballot. If petitioning candidate does not. So if you're interested in going through one of the parties, we have a Democratic town committee in town. We have a Republican town committee in town. They're both eagerly inviting people to get involved and to run for political office. So you can also do that if you'd like.
Just will add to be an unaffiliated voter and get onto the ballot. You do have to petition. The signature level is really low. I think when Dave Clune, as an unaffiliated voter, petitioned and was elected that year in 2015, I think he had to have 1% of the people that had voted in the last election, which was, what did he need? 12 people or something. So I don't want people to be worried it's a barrier. We've had better turnout in elections, so, it's going to be higher, but it isn't a barrier. But thanks for bringing that up, Mike.
Can I just add too, sometimes the town committees
We'll put up unaffiliated.
will put up
Yeah.
unaffiliated voters.
Well, Mike mentioned that with Chris Straub. Chris Straub is an unaffiliated voter, but he was on the ballot as a Democrat.
What is the master plan and when will the next one be done?
Okay, so the master plan is a long-range view of the current one we're doing is what we call the Greater Wilton Center area. So we are taking from basically the lights on Danbury Road, from Wolf Pit to Ridgefield Road and into Wilton Center. That is the mapped area that we will look at. And we will look at all of the regulatory obstacles, if you will, to development. So we will look at bulk and area and use. We will also look at the traffic patterns, the pedestrian patterns. We will look at the current uses in terms of where we have residential, where we don't have residential, where we have retail, where we have office, and come up with a plan with input from the general public, from the property owners, very important, but also current market trends and what the economics are of development, and put that all into a format that will look to develop, further develop Wilton Center or the Greater Wilton Center area. So what you can expect from that, the deliverable will be recommendations and will be specific regulation changes that we can plug into our regulations. So for instance, we might look to increase the sidewalk width to make it more pedestrian friendly. We might look to change the makeup of the uses allowed on the second floor of a building. We may look to change the density, the allowable density of the number of residential units on second and third floors. We may look and will look to change the density. We'll look at height. We'll look at setbacks. Most importantly, we will look at what we call the form of the buildings. And we will also look at the design guidelines on how all these buildings look.
We'll do two more quick ones. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. Can 830G be repealed?
I hope so.
Okay.
No, it's by statute. So, you would have to, it has to be taken up in the legislature. And I don't think heretofore there's been any appetite to repeal it. It just hasn't.
Absolutely. The current makeup of the legislature is not interested in repealing 830G. If anything, there's the fear of adding another layer of maybe even worse than 830G.
This will be the final question. What do you see as the major issue for your board over the next year?
So you want to start with me? Well, as I said, I went through the priorities. I think infrastructure is our number one focus. We absolutely need that police headquarters. We've worked on it a long time. We've presented the facts and we'll continue to do that. And it will be up to the voters to decide when they look at the facts, whether they agree with us. If you look at that other list of things that we're looking, projects, the bridges, you just look at town hall. The pillar that fell off is not the worst thing at town hall. Again, old building, windows that are original. Some of the rooms, offices don't have insulation. I say that all the time about mine, just, because it's me. So I'm not going to call out the other department people, but there's a lot of deferred maintenance and upgrades that haven't been done, not only at town hall, the annex, other areas. Fortunately, we're in a point that we have some funds to get it done. And the trails, they have become so much more important to this community since COVID. We want to invest in those. So it's really all about, as you say, the future, getting our infrastructure right. We very much support the amenities master planning, but we've got to fix what we have first. But we don't always have ARPA funds. We always don't have the savings that the Board of Selectmen has been able to put together. So us reducing our costs is really important. In anticipation of the debt service on the police headquarters, we actively work together, the department heads and how do we reduce our costs? At the time, we thought that the principal repayment would be about $750,000. Can we find $750,000 in cost reductions to pay for that? Which we did. We, as I said, the employees agreed to change to the state health plan. And then in addition, we were able to eliminate 2 positions by consolidating departments when there was a retirement. And there's the $750,000 to pay for it. Now you've already enjoying that savings of the $750,000 for a couple of years. But so for us, it's investing in the future, but also creating the financial environment where we can make those investments. Debbie.
I think I talked a little bit about it during my presentation, but the most pressing need is to make sure that we address the impacts of COVID and that we get students above and beyond and through that, and defining, what normal is after COVID. The world looks a little different. So I think trying to figure out all the ramifications there, both academically and in terms of mental health needs. Before COVID, we were noticing, and again, not unique to Wilton, but in general, a rise in the mental health needs of students. And we always have to kind of look to be as proactive and as creative as we can be to support those needs, because again, it impacts their readiness to learn. Looking forward, you heard me talk about special ed programs and growing the on-site programs that we have. Our special ed director has a couple of very nascent ideas, but we hope to sort of grow those to fruition. Our normal curriculum review process is, by normal, that's not to mean it is not incredibly important. We look at every single program on a regular basis. Right now, we're in the middle of looking at STEM program. And of course, our math improvement efforts are moving full throttle, and we have to make sure that we fully implement those. And our challenge, as Lynn alluded to as well, is always resources. We figure that we do produce an excellent school system at a reasonable level of budget requests. But there's sometimes a little push and pull about that. So that's always an annual challenge.
With respect to the Board of Finance, the biggest issue facing us is long-term planning and being proactive rather than reactive. All of us on the board have expressed frustration that we're just looking at needs and sources of revenue on an annual basis, and all of us believe we need to be looking ahead not just what the needs are this year, but what the needs we can project they're going to be next year and the year after that and the year after that, and up to 5 years out, as well as where are the sources of funds, and as Rick alluded to, what projects are in the pipeline where we can reasonably anticipate growing the tax base. And we've talked about this. The plan is that we're going to get together this summer, which is usually a quiet time for us, to try to do some long-term planning. And then when we begin our work again in the fall, we want to get together with the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Education, and the Planning and Zoning Commission to work on this together. So that's our issue.
So planning and zoning, one of our big issues is always 830G because we don't ever know where they're going to pop up. So that's always an ongoing fear for us. But really for us, the biggest things that we're looking to tackle is the master plan and really revising our regulations. Our regulations are pretty antiquated. We need to get our regulations updated. They need to be in an electronic format other than PDF. Our peer communities that have updated them. They're all smart regulations. You hit one link, it brings you to the next link. It's very straightforward. So that's a big challenge for us moving forward. Fortunately, it's funded and we can do it, but it takes a lot of effort on our part. And then we're going to be continuing the master planning in those other areas, as Lynn alluded to, hopefully amenities master plan. And they take a lot of effort and a lot of work on behalf of staff that already has a lot on their plate with a lot of these larger applications coming in. So we have to figure out how we can almost juggle staff. Some of it has to do with hiring the consultants required who can help our staff because we have limited resources at the staff level. And that's kind of our challenge.
Well, I just want to thank you all for giving yet another evening of your lives to come out and give us this presentation. Thank you to Good Morning Wilton for being here and the library for accommodating us, and my fellow league members for encouraging me to get this done. Hopefully, if you're watching from home or wherever you're watching, or for being here, share this. The videos will be available. And, we're only as good as how informed we are, I think. So, and please come to the town meeting on May 3rd. Thank you.